My ex called me out of nowhere on a Tuesday afternoon. I had not heard her voice in 31 days. She told me she was pregnant. She told me she was keeping the baby. And she told me her parents wanted to meet me that night. I was 20 years old, an international student living alone in a country that was not mine. And I had exactly 4 hours to figure out how to walk into that house. If this story hits close to home, please like this video and subscribe to her words. What happened in that meeting that night changed the entire direction of my life. My name is Noah Carter. I am 20 years old, and I am originally from Manchester in the United Kingdom. About 2 years ago, I moved to the Netherlands to study business and economics at a university in Amsterdam. It was the first time I had ever lived away from home properly. No family nearby, no childhood friends down the road, just me, a small student apartment, a new city, and the kind of nervous excitement that comes with starting completely fresh somewhere new. I came from a working-class family back in Manchester. My mom worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood. My dad did construction work. They were proud people, hardworking and honest and not afraid of anything. They saved for years to help me get to university, and I carried that with me every single day. The Netherlands was a different world. Clean and organized and quietly beautiful in a way I was not used to. Wide canals and tall, narrow houses and cyclists everywhere you looked. I fell in love with it almost immediately. And then about 3 weeks after I arrived, I met Emma. Emma van der Berg was in 2 of my first semester classes. She was Dutch, naturally confident in a way that did not feel arrogant, and she had this very direct way of looking at you when you were talking, like she was genuinely interested in every word you said. I had never met anyone quite like her. We started studying together, then getting coffee, then spending entire evenings walking along the canals, talking about everything and nothing. By the end of that first semester, we were together properly. Emma came from a wealthy Dutch family. Her father, Willem, ran a successful import and export company. Her mother, Sofie, was an architect. They lived in a beautiful house in one of the nicer neighborhoods outside Amsterdam, the kind of house that had a separate entrance for guests and original paintings in the hallway. I will be honest, that intimidated me at first. My background and hers were very different, and I was aware of that every time I visited their home. But Emma never made me feel less than. Not once. And after a while, the difference in our background stopped feeling like something I needed to worry about. We were genuinely good together for almost 2 full years. We argued sometimes the way every couple does, but nothing serious. Nothing that felt like it could not be worked through. Until the fight that ended everything. I am not going to go into every detail of what that argument was about because some things deserve to stay private. What I will say is that it was the kind of fight that had been building quietly for a while, the kind where both people have been holding things back for too long, and then one evening everything comes out at once louder and harder than either person intended. Emma was furious. I was hurt. We said things that were difficult to take back, and at the end of it she told me we were done. I believed her. I packed up the things I had left at her apartment and I walked out. I did not call or text after that. She did not reach out either. 31 days of complete silence. I threw myself into university work. I went to the gym every morning. I called my mom back in Manchester more than I usually did. I told myself I was fine. I told myself it was better this way. I was not fine, but I was managing. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I was sitting at my desk in my apartment trying to finish an essay that was due the following morning. I looked at the screen and saw Emma's name and felt something drop in my stomach. I answered. Her voice was quiet and very controlled in the way it gets when she is trying hard to stay calm. She said she needed to tell me something and she needed me to listen without interrupting. I said, "Okay." She told me she was pregnant. I did not say anything for a long moment. I just sat there at my desk with my essay open on the laptop in front of me and the whole world suddenly feeling very far away. She said the baby was mine. She said she had not been with anyone else. She said she had already decided she was keeping it and taking a gap year from university to manage the first months. Everything was already decided. She said there was one more thing. She said her parents knew. She said Willem and Sofie wanted to meet me. That night, at their house. I asked her what time. She said 8 o'clock. I looked at the clock on my laptop screen. It was 4 in the afternoon. I had 4 hours. I sat completely still for probably 5 full minutes after the call ended. Then I picked up my phone and called my best friend Marcus. Marcus was also an international student, originally from London, and he had been my closest friend since our first week at university. He was the kind of person who could be completely honest with you without making you feel worse about yourself. He answered immediately. I told him everything in about 3 minutes. The call, the pregnancy, the meeting at 8. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Well, that is a lot for a Tuesday." I laughed despite everything. That is what Marcus did. He made the impossible feel slightly more manageable. He told me to shower and put on something decent. He told me to go to that house and listen before I spoke. He told me I was not the first 20-year-old to find himself in a situation like this, and I would not be the last. He told me that whatever happened in that room, I needed to walk in with my head up. He said they are going to look at you and judge what kind of man you are in about 30 seconds. Make sure what they see is worth something. I hung up and stood in the middle of my small apartment for a long moment. Then I went to shower and put on the best shirt I owned. I arrived at Willem and Sofie's house at exactly 8 o'clock. I stood at the front gate for a moment looking at the lights on inside. I could see movement behind the frosted glass of the front window. My heart was going faster than I wanted it to. I thought about my mum back in Manchester, working 2 jobs, never afraid of anything. I pushed open the gate and walked up the path. Rang the doorbell. The door opened, and Willem van der Berg looked at me for the first time as the man who had gotten his daughter pregnant. What happened inside that house in the next 2 hours was something I walked in completely unprepared for. And what Willem said to me in the first 5 minutes changed how I saw everything. Willem van der Berg was taller than I expected. He stood in the doorway for just a moment looking at me, not aggressively, not warmly either, just looking, the way a man looks at someone he is trying to understand quickly. Then he stepped aside and said, "Come in, Noah." He knew my name. That meant Emma had told them enough about me that I was not a complete stranger walking through their door. I did not know if that made things better or worse. I stepped inside and Willem closed the door behind me. The hallway was exactly as I remembered it. Original paintings on the wall, warm light, the kind of quiet that expensive houses have. Sofie was standing at the entrance to the living room. She looked at me with an expression I could not fully read, not unkind, just careful. She said, "Good evening, Noah." She said Emma is in the living room. I followed them in. Emma was sitting on the sofa with her hands folded in her lap. She looked up when I came in, and for a moment it was just the 2 of us looking at each other across that room. 31 days of silence, and then a phone call, and now this. She looked tired. She also looked more certain than I had ever seen her about anything. I sat down in the chair across from her. Willem and Sofie sat together on the sofa beside Emma, and the meeting began. Willem spoke first. He was direct and calm and completely in control of the room in the way that men who have run successful businesses for 20 years tend to be. He said he was not there to make me feel cornered. He said he was not there to make demands or threats. He said he was there because his daughter was pregnant and he wanted to understand what kind of man was going to be part of his grandchild's life. He said he had one question for me before anything else was discussed. He looked at me directly and asked me what I intended to do. The room was completely silent. I had rehearsed things on the walk over. Careful, measured sentences about wanting to be responsible and needing time to understand the situation. Diplomatic words that said a lot without committing to anything. but sitting in that room with Willem looking at me and Emma sitting 3 feet away, and the reality of everything pressing down from every direction, I forgot every single rehearsed word. I just told the truth. I said I was scared. I said I was 20 years old and far from my family, and I had found out about this 4 hours ago. I said I did not have money or a finished degree or a plan. I said I did not know what my legal rights were in the Netherlands or what any of this meant practically for any of us. Then I said the most important thing. I said, but I am not going anywhere. The room stayed silent for another moment. Then Willem nodded slowly. Just once. And something in his expression shifted. Not into warmth exactly, but into something that felt like the beginning of respect. Sofie looked at Emma. Emma was looking at me. We talked for almost 2 hours that night. Real honest conversation about things that none of us had easy answers to. Willem explained how Dutch family law worked and what rights and responsibilities I had as a father in the Netherlands. He had already spoken to a lawyer. He was prepared in a way that told me he had been thinking about this carefully since Emma told them. Sofie talked about practical support. She said they were not going to leave Emma to manage this alone, and they were not asking me to either. She said they understood I was a student far from home and that nobody expected me to have everything figured out overnight. At one point, Sofie looked at me and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "The fact that you came tonight tells us something important about you, Noah." I did not know what to say to that. I just nodded. Later that evening, when Willem and Sofie stepped out of the room to make tea, Emma and I finally talked alone for the first time. It was awkward and honest and painful and necessary all at once. She said she was sorry for the way the call had gone. She said she knew she had delivered everything at once without giving me space to respond. She said she was scared too, even though she had not said it that way. I told her I wished she had called me sooner. She said she wished she had too. We did not fix everything that night. We did not suddenly become a couple again or pretend the fight that ended us had not happened. But we made an agreement. We agreed that whatever we were to each other now, the baby came first. Every decision from this point forward would be made together. That felt like the only solid ground available to us, and we both held on to it. That was 8 months ago. Emma and I are not together romantically. We have talked about it honestly, and we both understand that the relationship we had before is not something we are trying to rebuild right now. What we are building instead is something harder and more important. We are building the ability to be good parents together. Emma is 7 months pregnant now. A boy. We decided on a name together last month, sitting at the same kitchen table in her parents' house, where Willem first asked me what I intended to do. I called my mom in Manchester, the morning after that first meeting, and told her everything. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Noah, I did not raise you to run from hard things." I told her I knew that. She booked a flight to Amsterdam for next month. She wants to be there when her grandson arrives. Willem and Sofie have already invited her to stay at their house, and my mom, who has never been outside England in her life, said yes without hesitating. I think about that sometimes. 2 families from completely different worlds sitting in the same house because of one small person who is not even here yet. Marcus came over the evening after the meeting at Willem and Sofie's house. He brought food, and we sat in my small apartment, and I told him everything that had happened. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I told you to walk in with your head up." I told him it worked. He laughed. I laughed. And for the first time since that Tuesday phone call, I felt like I could breathe properly. I am still scared some days. I will not pretend otherwise. I am 20 years old, finishing a university degree in a country that is not mine, and in 4 weeks, I am going to be somebody's father. There are moments when the weight of that is genuinely overwhelming. But then I think about Willem asking me what I intended to do, and I think about the answer I gave him. I am not going anywhere. That was the truest thing I have ever said out loud, and every day I wake up and choose to mean it. My son is going to come into a world where both of his parents showed up for him, where both families across different countries and different backgrounds chose to make room for each other. That is not nothing. That is actually everything. If this story moved you or made you feel less alone in something you are carrying right now, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Her Words for more real stories about real people, navigating the hardest moments of their lives. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever had to walk into a room completely unprepared and find your voice anyway? I read every single one. This is Her Words, and your story always matters here.